All right, guys and girls, welcome back to another fun-filled, action-packed, non-flipped Algebra 2 classroom video with me, Coach Gu. And if you would remember yesterday, we found axis of symmetry, vertex, minimum, maximum, and the range of a quadratic function, all from the vertex form of a quadratic equation. So today, though, we're going to find the y-intercepts. We're going to learn how to estimate a graph, draw a rough sketch, and then we're also going to learn how to write a vertex form equation given just a point and a vertex. So let's dive right in, finding the y-intercept. So, we learned how to find a bunch of things yesterday. Now we're going to learn how to find the y-intercept. But it's very important that you understand right here that the y-intercept is always in the form of blank, comma, the y value. What do you think goes in that blank? It's an ordered pair. And for the y-intercept, your x value is always what, though? What's your x value on the y-intercept? Zero, right. It's always 0. So you're going to put 0. And the x value is always 0, right? Because the y-intercept, right, every time you write the y-intercept, it's always 0, comma, a number, right? Yeah. And that's what this says, yeah. And so it's very important to remember that the x value is 0 because that's where all of this even comes from. So if you forget this process, if you remember, okay, the x value is 0, then you can maybe remind yourself how to actually do this. So let's do an example. Let's say you have the equation f of x equals, did I start recording? Yes. F of x equals 2 times x minus 1, quantity squared, plus 2. All right, remember, on the y-intercept, your x value is 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to substitute 0 in for x. So look at your equation, and we're just going to replace the x with a 0. So if I replace the x with a 0, what's it going to be? 2 parentheses, 0 minus 1, and then squared, plus 2, right. So we substitute in 0 for x, and then we're just going to solve this equation now. This is very step by step, but some people will forget, the order of how to actually do all this. So we're just going to walk through this real quick. So the first, after you've replaced your x with a 0, the first thing we're going to do is simplify inside the parentheses. So if I simplify what's inside the parentheses, 0 minus 1, what is that? Negative 1. So now my equation is going to be 2 times negative 1 squared plus 2, right? Okay? After you've simplified inside the parentheses, the next step here is to square the value inside the parentheses. So if I square negative 1, what is that? Squaring negative 1 is like negative 1 times negative 1. So that would be 1, positive 1, right. So if I do that, now it's going to be 2 times positive 1, because I've just squared negative 1, plus 2. All right. Step 4 now, we're just going to multiply those two numbers, the 2 and the 1, right? That's going to be 2 plus 2. Because it's 2 times 1, which is 2, plus 2. And then we just add these together. 4. And that is your y value of the y-intercept. So what's my actual y-intercept then? 0, 4, right. 0, comma 4. And there you go. So let's do an example together then.
Is it with all of them, you substitute 0?
Yeah, anytime you're looking for the y-intercept, you just substitute in 0 for x. So on example number 1, let's do this one together real quick. So what's the first thing I'm going to do? Parentheses 0, we replace the x with a 0. Minus 4. Squared. Plus 1. What's the next step? Right, we simplify inside the parentheses, so what would that give us? Negative 4. Squared plus 1. What's the next step now? Square whatever's inside the parentheses. So what is negative 4 squared? 16. Because negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. And so then 16 plus 1 is?
17.
So what is my y-intercept? 0, 17, right. And so that tells you the point that it's going to cross the y-axis. So I want you guys to try 2 and 3 on your own. All right, so let's check our answers to make sure everyone got the same thing. So on number 2, we got to replace the x with a 0. So it's going to be 3 times 0 minus 1 squared minus 2. We deal with the inside the parentheses first. So now what's inside the parentheses?
-1.
-1 Square root of minus 2. Then we square it. What is negative 1 squared? 1. So now we have 3 times 1 minus 2. What's 3 times 1? 3. So we got 3 minus 2, which is? 1. So what is my y-intercept? 0, 1. Very good. And now the third one right here. Same thing. We start by replacing x with a 0. 0 plus 3 squared plus 4. All right, so first we're going to simplify inside the parentheses. So what's 0 plus 3? 3. So we're going to have negative 2 times 3 squared plus 4. Next we square what's inside the parentheses? 3 times 3, which is? 9. So we have negative 2 times 9 plus 4. What's negative 2 times 9?
Negative 18.
Negative 18. So we have negative 18 plus 4, which is?
Negative 14.
Negative 14. So what's my y-intercept? 0, negative 14. Very good. Nice. Nice. All right, so moving down then, we're going to see how we can estimate a graph from a vertex and a y-intercept. So far, guys, when you draw the graphs, you start with the points on the table, right? You do transformations, and you find 5 exact points, right? But now it's different. This time, we're estimating a graph. It's not going to be exact, but it's going to be pretty close, okay? And so you're going to see that if you can find the vertex and the y-intercept, that's enough to estimate a whole graph. Okay, so watch this. All right, so look at this equation. F of x equals negative 1/2 times x plus 2 quantity squared plus 3. So if we find the vertex and the y-intercept, we'll be able to estimate a whole graph. So watch this. First step, we're going to find and graph the vertex. So looking at the equation, what's the vertex here?
2.
What is the vertex? Negative 2, 3.
Oh.
The vertex is negative 2, 3. Remember, that's from the vertex form of the equation. Take the opposite of the inside of parentheses. That's the x value of the vertex. Take the number from the outside. That's the y value of the vertex. So graph that point first. We want to graph the vertex.
Where'd you get 3?
Yeah, we just because it's like
Oh, your guy says plus 2, right?
Yeah.
So just change it to plus 3 so it matches up.
Okay.
I was confused.
Whoops. Whoops. All right. Yeah, so change it to plus 3 so y'all says plus 3. There you go. Okay, so negative 2, comma 3. That's the vertex. Graph your vertex, okay? And now, I guess just right away, we're going to identify the axis of symmetry. What's the axis of symmetry? X equals negative 2. So the axis of symmetry is x equals negative 2. So let's go ahead and draw the axis of symmetry. Because that's going to let me know where my mirror line is, right? The axis of symmetry is like that mirror line. All right, so step 2 then, we're going to find and graph the y-intercept. So how do I find the y-intercept again?
You plug in 0.
Right, that's what we just did. We're going to plug in the 0 for the x and solve to find the y-intercept. So it's important that you understand, what each thing that we're doing is. So we got negative 1/2 times 0 plus 2 squared plus 3. All right, we're going to solve inside the parentheses first. So 0 plus 2 is?
2.
So we got negative 1/2 times 2 squared plus 3. Then we're going to square inside the parentheses. So we got negative 1/2 times 4 plus 3. All right, now real quick, some of you guys will just be able to do negative 1/2 times 4 and you'll know the answer. But for those who don't like multiplying fractions, if you have 1 over a number like this, that's the same thing as just dividing by that number on the bottom.
So it's negative 2.
Exactly. So this is the same thing as 4 divided by 2, but then there's a negative sign, so negative 2. So this is going to be negative 2 plus 3, which is what? Positive 1. So what's your y-intercept?
0, 1.
0, 1. So let's graph the y-intercept then, 0, 1, right here. Okay? And so now with those 2 points, we'll be able to pretty much sketch our whole graph. Because when I find that y-intercept, I already have my axis of symmetry, right? The axis of symmetry is like a mirror. So if I reflect my y-intercept across the axis of symmetry, that will give me a third point. And so if you don't know exactly how to do that, just go from your points, the y-intercept. It's the y-intercept, okay? That's very important that you understand. You're reflecting the y-intercept. So you go from the y-intercept, count how many units it is to the axis of symmetry. How many units away is this? 2. Then we start on the axis of symmetry and go 2 in the opposite direction. So now 1, 2, and there's my new points. Right? And so now I have 3 points, right? And that's enough to pretty much sketch my whole graph. All I have to do is connect these points, make sure it looks something realistic, like a quadratic, like this. And by the way, this point that we reflected, that would have been -4, 1. So I'm just going to write that here. All right, and make sure it actually looks like a quadratic, right? It's supposed to be U-shaped. If you start drawing triangles or pentagons or whatever, you're going to get it wrong, okay? Yeah.
How'd you get the other point again?
We reflected it across, we reflected our y-intercept across the axis of symmetry. Okay? All right, and then one more thing that you guys need to know how to do is estimate the x-intercepts. Do you see the x-intercepts right here, how it doesn't exactly cross right here and here?
Yeah.
X-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis, right? But that's not exactly on a point. So in this case, you're just going to estimate it. So you just pick, you just pick what you think it looks like. So for me, I thought it looked like -4.20, and the one on the right I said was like 0.2, 0. But anything that kind of makes sense or is close is fine. But obviously it's going to be wrong if you put like -20, 0 and like +17, 0, right? It's got to be somewhat believable, So this is estimating. You don't know exactly what the number is, but you just look at your picture, right? And kind of guess what those points are. Yeah, I put 0.2 because that's what it looks like to me right here. All right, so now go to the back side then, and I want you to try one of these all on your own. All right, let's check our answers. So example 2, first we need to identify the vertex. What is the vertex here? 3, -2, right. And so that's going to be right 1, 2, 3, down 2 right here. What is the axis of symmetry?
X equals 3.
X equals 3, right, because that's straight out of the x value of my vertex. So I'm going to draw that axis of symmetry to let myself know, to remind myself to reflect, to let myself know I'm reflecting across the axis of symmetry, not the y-axis. Okay. All right, so now we need to find the y-intercept. How do I find the y-intercept? Plug in 0 for the x. So we got 1/3. 0 minus 3 squared minus 2. All right, so then we're going to simplify what's inside the parentheses. So I'm going to have 1/3 times -3. All right, and then we're going to square what's inside the parentheses. So what is -3 squared? 9. All right, so we got 1/3 times 9 minus 2. Now remember, 1/3 times 9, if you can multiply that out, that's fine. But also you can think about that as 9 and then what? Divided by 3, because it's 1 over that 3, right? So 9 divided by 3 is another way you can think about that. That would make it 3 minus 2, which is?
0, 1.
Right, so that's right, your y-intercept is 0, 1. So graph that 0, 1's right here. We found the y-intercept, we graphed the y-intercept, and now we reflect the y-intercept across my axis of symmetry. And so you could just count how many spaces away it is from the axis of symmetry. 1, 2, 3. And then I count in the opposite direction. 1, 2, 3. So it's over here. All right, so now I just connect these points. Hey. And again, like this, something like that. And we estimate the x-intercept. So it's crossing right here. Whoa, wait a second. Oh, hold on. Whoa. Come on, Microsoft Word. Oh man. Oh boy.
At the end of science,
Probably not, but. Alright, so we gotta estimate the x-intercept. So looks like it's crossing right here. Okay. Right there and right there. So what points did you guys say? What? So one of them you said was 5 point what? I mean anything's close. I mean I just say this is like 0.5 and 0 and 5 point. Well, the other one looks like 5.2, but you know, whatever.
Is it test?
Yes, it
Like
is.
the estimated x-intercept?
Yes.
What if it's not exactly what?
Like if it's not exactly, that's fine. You know, it just has to be somewhat close. You know, that's why I said if you put like -10, well, that's not even near. You know, so it just has to be somewhere close. All right, so that's that, and now on to the final topic of the day, and that is writing a vertex form equation given the vertex and a point. So first of all, a vertex form equation looks like this one up here, right? The 1/3 times x minus 3 quantity squared minus 2. We can write an equation like that if we're just given a vertex and a point. So let's take a look at this example. So it says write an equation in vertex form of a quadratic function with a vertex of 3, 7 that goes through the point 0, 6. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to take the points they gave us. They gave us those numbers for a reason. We're going to use every single one. Watch this. We're going to write the vertex, that's 3, 7. And we're going to write the point 0, 6. So 3, 7 is my vertex, right? So 3, what letter, what variable is 3 in my vertex form formula? H. Because remember, your vertex is always H. And then, what is that? 7? K, right? Because vertex is always HK. So I already found 2 of my variables, right? Now here's my point. So which one of my variables would this 0 be? X, that's right. And what about the 6? It would be Y. But do you see Y in this equation up here? No, but Y is the same as what though? F of X, that's right. So if you want to let yourself know, Y is the same thing as F of X, right there. Alright, so after you've labeled all your points, now you're going to replace all those numbers into your formula up here. Okay, so what is my Y value? 6. So we got 6 equals, did we find A? We don't know A, right? So we're just going to rewrite A right there. We don't know what A is. Parentheses, what is X? 0. So 0 minus 3, right? Because H is 3. Now be careful right here. Because the formula is x minus h, right? Right here we have positive 3, so it's just 0 minus 3. But what if this was a negative 3? It would be plus 3, right? So if h was negative 3, then it would be 0 plus 3. So make sure you remember about subtracting negative numbers, okay? All right, so then we close the parentheses, squared, and then plus k. What's k? 7, so plus 7. All right? So we substituted all those numbers. We used every single number they gave us. But we can see we don't know what A is. So we need to find A. That's most of the work here, is just finding A. So we're going to go through this equation and solve for A. So let me show you the steps here. 6 equals A times 0 minus 3 squared plus 7, right? And so we're just trying to solve for A. We're trying to get A by itself. But the very first thing I would do is simplify what's inside the parentheses. So if I simplify what's inside the parentheses, I get 6 equals... Right, A times negative 3 squared, squared plus 7. All right, what would you do next?
Wouldn't you square the 3?
Right, you can square the negative 3. So if I square the negative 3, what does it become?
9.
Right, so 6 equals A times what?
9.
Times 9, because negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. And we still have the plus 7 on the end. All right, now remember, we're just trying to solve for A. We're trying to get A by itself. So what would you do next? Can't do that yet. Can't do that yet. Subtract 7. Remember? Because it's got the plus 7 and then we got to subtract 7 first. Right, so let's subtract 7. And when I subtract 7, what do I get?
Negative 1.
-1 equals
8 times 9.
a times 9. And now my final step, what do I do?
Multiply.
Divide by 9.
Divide by 9.
Right. So because that gives a by itself, so a equals what? -1/9 equals a. That's right. So we always want to get a into the most reduced fraction form, right? This is already simplified as much as it can be, right? But if you had like, 5/10, that's 1/2, right? So you want to reduce it as much as possible. And so that's all the hard work right there. We found a, and now we can write our vertex form equation. So remember, it looks like this up here, right? It's f of x equals a times x minus the h value vertex, like this, right? So we're going to write something that looks like that. So we're going to start with f of x equals, what is a? We know a now, right? What is it? -1/9. And then parentheses x minus 3 parentheses squared, and then plus 7. Whoa. And that is your vertex form equation of a quadratic function that has a vertex of 3, 7 and goes to the point 0, 6. If you graph this equation that you just wrote and you actually graphed it, you would find that it has that vertex they gave you and it goes through the point that they gave you. All right, so I want you to try example 3, the next one, on your own. All right, so let's check this last one then. Get this out of my way. All right, so we're going to label everything first. So my vertex was 4, -2, and my point was 1 and 4. So what's my h here? What's this 4 right here? The 4 from my vertex. It's h. What's the -2 then? Okay, what is this 1? X, and what is my 4? Y, that's right. All right, so now I'm going to put everything into the formula. So it's going to be y first, which is 4 equals a, right, parentheses, 1 minus 4. Oh, what the heck? 1 minus 4 parentheses squared, and then what goes at the very end? -2, that's right. So now we're going to solve for a. So first let's solve what's inside the parentheses. So what's 1 minus 4?
-3.
Right, so it's going to be 4 equals a parentheses -3, right? Squared. -2. Next we got to square what's inside the parentheses. So what's -3 squared?
9.
Right, +9. So 4 equals a times +9 -2. Then what do I do from here? Add the 2 first. You got to add the 2 first. And that leaves you with what?
6 equals a parentheses 9.
Right, 6 equals a times 9. Right, then we have to divide by 9. So hang on a second. A times 9 divided by 9. So right there it tells you a is what? 6 over 9 equals a, but that simplifies to?
2 over 3.
Right, 2 over 3. So 2 over 3 equals a. So now how do I write my equation then? F of x, we always start with f of x, remember? Equals 2/3, because now I know my a, 2/3. Parentheses, x minus 4, that's right. Right, squared, and then -2. And that would be your equation of a quadratic function that has a vertex of 4, -2, and it goes through the point 1, 4. That's the last example. That ends the notes, guys. So see you in the next one. Peace!